Hey everyone, hope you are doing well. In this session, I would like to share an exciting project that I worked on for my 9-year-old during my Christmas holidays. But before I go there, I just want to say that the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this channel or presentation are solely my own and do not reflect those of any company, organization, or brand that I'm associated with. The content shared here is for info and educational purpose only, aimed at learning and knowledge sharing. It should not be considered professional advice or official representation of any entity. Viewers are encouraged to conduct their own research and exercise their own judgment when applying any insights from this content. During this whole session, you would hear about stories. So, this is all about stories. So, we call this project as Kahani, which in Hindi means stories. So you will hear about the journey of building this solution for my son. Now about this project. So this was just to give you some context. I was in Minneapolis having a holiday break during Christmas time, and Christmas time, Minneapolis, you know how the weather was outside. It was pretty cold, snowing, and my 9-year-old loves to read stories, and we didn't have enough storybooks for him, so there was this need to get some books so he can spend his time enjoying some new books. Now, to get new books, we could go outside. We could not do that with the snowfall outside, and we could have also gone and ordered books. But what we found, or from his feedback, is that the books are pretty standardized. They do not necessarily match the the reader's interests, and also as parents, it doesn't always have. It may be just having enough entertainment value, but not so much of a moral value. So that was also critical to us. So with that said, we thought we can potentially do something about it. So here we are. We made some few phone calls to few parents, and we asked if they also have a similar need for their kids to read books with moral values. So we had essentially two different personas uh, in this whole context. One is parents who definitely want their kids to read books, not have so much screen time, but rather read. But they also wanted to make sure that the content is safe for the kids. The content has moral value. This was critical across all the calls we made to parents. And there also need to have engaging stories. Uh, and then they also wanted to make sure that the children can relate to what they're reading there. And then from the children's side, after talking to few of, obviously my son, and then few of his friends, we found out that they want engaging stories. They want to have content with pictures, potentially content that they can relate to, that matches their interests, and they can get it on demand, like whenever they want it. So call that our design thinking exercise, and this is how we can consolidate it. So we have parents and children as two different personas, and then the parents want to be able to preview the content that they are going to send to their children. They want to embed moral values in the stories whenever it's possible, or teach something that is meaningful for their children. and then they want the stories to be personalized for the children. And then for the children or the readers, they want interactive stories. They want to relate to heroes potentially, or they being the heroes of the story, or their friends being the heroes of the story, and then embedded with excitement or adventures that they like. So it was a balancing act, I would say, between the children and parents. Now, with that done, we came up with this whole idea of a minimum viable solution that we would like to build. Super fast. We can give it to the hands of my son and he can test and read and give us feedback. So, what we came up with is we want to build a platform or a solution where we can enhance the children's storytelling with personalized interactive content. So personalized story generation would be one of the functionality here. Uh, we definitely want parents to review the content before they can send it to their children. We want high quality illustrations because the children find it more engaging when there are pictures that are related to the story and things like that. And then we wanted engaging and interactive content, so it has some excitement what happens next kind of thing. And then finally, we also wanted seamless user experience, which provides a user friendly platform with secure access options. So, so what we mean by seamless user experience means you don't have a much of a learning curve. Like it could be like a ebook reader kind of experience. Now you're building something, so you want to define your success criteria. And for us, the success criteria is it engaging enough, right? So user engagement with parents getting involved, reviewing the content and releasing those contents to their children. The story quality, again, we can collect feedback. How well do you like it? Did you really make it a favorite story? And finally, retention here means that my son really likes to read it and come back and read more stories, request more stories, things like that. Okay, time for engineering, right? So we recognize that we have we have to build something, whether it's a web or mobile. Uh, Quick to start would be web platform that is mobile optimal, like support different form factors. Has a rich reading experience, but the children should not have much of a learning curve. If they're used to ebook reading experience, then they should be able to have a similar experience here. That's a reading experience. And then registration, security, all of that, that's the user, that's where they would register, create their profiles, parents would create a profiles and then add their children. And then creating an association between user story and the user's profiles. And finally, the most important part is generating the story. So most probably the bulk of the application where there is a lot of intelligence that goes into building it. Now, before we jump into how we would like to build it, let's understand what potentially goes into creating a storybook, right? And this is all me not being an expert and just imagining what probably goes in there. So I could be completely off here, but just sharing my thoughts. So somebody writes a book, and then it gives that book to somebody else, reads page by page, finds each page what's happening, and then you want to create a picture for each of these pages. Somebody else reads the summary of each page, and then the illustrator or designer would create graphics that reflect what's happening in that page. And then somebody call that person as assembler, and that person takes all these pages and then the pictures and stitches them together, and then gives to somebody who can read that and give a summary like a synopsis or something that you can put at the back of the story. It doesn't reveal all the details but has enough to create your interest, and then finally you get the book, right? The final product. The physical world, it could be a physical book or it could be a ebook. Now, in this, as you can see, there are different phases where human intelligence is needed, right? So you're writing a book, that's a creative process. There is some intelligence involved in writing it. And then somebody reading each page and extracting the context out of it, that's another layer of intelligence. Somebody who takes that picture, that does a lot of creative work, that's another layer of intelligence. And then finally, another stage where human intelligence would be needed would be somebody reading the whole book and giving a summary of it. Right. So all these are different steps. Now we want to use digital labor, or like think of technology that would actually orchestrate this whole process of creating the storybook. So that's what we'll talk about next. So translate that into a digital world. Here we have you can think of like a workflow where different things are happening at different layers and different stages, and at each of these stages there is some level of intelligence involved, some level of understanding and managing state involved. Like that means you wrote a story, you maintain the state of that story creation. You have the content of the story, you have different pages, and then you send it to the next step. In the next step, there is another process that is reading each page and getting summaries generated out of it. It's some intelligence there, and then sends it to, for each of these pages, once you get a summary you send it to another uh, task or agent that would actually use that picture and uh, do some creative work of illustrations that you can embed. And then finally you send the request to the assembler. Like you have now all these pages generated, and then you stitch them together and create a storybook, and then finally pass it down to another I would say task or an agent, which also has some intelligence in reading the whole story and getting a summary out, so we can put it as summary or synopsis for the story. And then finally we tie these together into a nicely presentable format, which could be like a ebook reader kind of experience. That's the final product. So now let's pause here, right? If we want to build this with the current set of modern tool set, right, agentic AI makes perfect sense, because uh, typically when you are looking at orchestrating something that has multiple layers, and and maybe one or more layers have intelligence involved. So it has intelligence, it has managing of state, right? So some memory, like each phase has the content that's getting passed down to the next step, and then each step also does downstream processing, means it sends requests to another task or an agent to process and generate additional content. And then finally there is a task of assembling all of that and storing it. And once all of this is done, there is another agent that uh, is reading the whole content and generating a summary out of it. So that's why we feel like agentic AI would be a perfect candidate for it. But there are other ways of doing it. But I would like to leverage the power of agentic AI. So So where we are going with this is think of like a book writer agent, and then sends summarizer agent that reads for each page, and then illustrator or designer, graphic designer agent that takes all these different content for each summary of each page and then generates pictures, and then finally calls the assembler saying that hey, go and stitch these together and store it. And then finally another agent that reads the whole story and creates a summary out of it, and also updates that so that we can present uh, the storybook. Okay, so that's the thought process. Like to summarize, we are going to use AI agents to orchestrate this whole process of creating stories and have a lot of fun with it. Okay, so let's talk about the different technologies we could potentially use to build this. So we know that we will build a web application which provides adaptability for different form factors. So Next.js come to mind. It comes with React front end, and then also the ability to directly integrate through backend like a Node.js, Next.js code. So that will be our front end, and that would interact with two APIs as we see here is user administration like registration of profiles or requesting books and all of that, and then associating the users with different storybooks, and then the layer that generates or orchestrates the request, the whole autonomous uh, solution part, where a request comes for a reader and we would orchestrate the workflow of creating a storybook. So for that we are going with Creo AI, which is a pretty popular platform. So Creo AI is a pretty popular agentic AI platform. Has a lot of connectivities, like in terms of LLMs, and then different tool sets that you can connect to for retrieval or for processing. And then for the LLM for this, we are selecting Anthropic Claude Sonnet, which would be a great fit for this kind of content generation. We'll be using a powerful image generation platform like Stable Diffusion, Stability AI. And then once the images are generated, we would upload them to S3 storage. And for all these, once the books are created, we would store them in MongoDB. Why MongoDB? May think we may need elasticity of the schema, like we may want to add attributes later. So going with a NoSQL with MongoDB would be a good choice. And then for all the notifications, to start with, just if you want to do email notifications, you can go with Twilio SendGrid. That's what I've selected, but again, at each of these there are quite a few options that you could use. LangGraph and few other frameworks for agentic AI. And then similarly for image generation, you can select other platforms. And then for LLMs, you can select different other LLM solutions as well. Okay, so now it's time for a demo. Let's see how it works. So I'd like to walk through the sequence diagram of this application. Now we're looking at the lower level of the application. So we have a user requesting a story, and we'll focus for the purpose of this, would focus more on the layer that orchestrates the whole agentic workflow. So user request a book, and we know about the user interests, all that. Think of them as metadata for the story request that goes through the entry point where there is an orchestration on Creo AI, which we'll look at. So so all of these, think of them uh, as agents that are executing different jobs. So one is the story creator that writes a story with the interest, moral value that is requested, and then once the story is created, it delegates the responsibility to the title generator that generates the title for the story. And then another uh, task that gets executed downstream would be to read the story and generate a kind of a synopsis or prelude. Now there is another task that needs to be performed, which is generating pictures for each of them. So for each we would each page we would uh, read through the content and then generate a prompt to generate a picture. And then once we create those pictures, we would upload them to a storage, and then finally we would take the content of the pages and the pictures for each of those pages and send it down to think of like the assembler in the previous picture. So it's like a book record creator which writes all of this information into into a NoSQL schema in MongoDB. So that's the sequence diagram. So that's a sequence of how it orchestrates. Let's take a quick look at the code, and then we would be able to run a demo. So here we are looking at the story generation code. So as you can see here, so we have different agents here like we discussed. So we have a story creator, we have a prelude generator, there's image generators, the one that does uploading the images once they're generated, and then finally the book record creator. So all these are orchestrated in the workflow that we saw before. And to take a look at that, what that orchestration looks like, we're using like we discussed Creo AI to orchestrate this. So just think of a crew of all these agents working on it. So we're using the Bedrock runtime to interact with the LLM, so that will be referenced in each of these agents. And then we also have different tools that are created here. So so let's take a look at one of the agents. So it's a story creator agent that takes a goal and then what it's intended to do, and then it has a story tool like what you'd be using, and what the intelligence layer is the LLM that you are connecting to. The here we are just using Bedrock, which kind of gives you a gateway to Anthropic clouds on it. Yeah, so that's how it gets executed. As you can see, multiple steps. Okay, so with that said, let's jump back into the seeing the how the product works. We all love demos, so here is a demo of the application. So I've already registered myself. This is running on my local host. So I have registered. You can register as a parent, and then I am signing in as a parent. And then I can create readers here, right? And in these readers I can create their interests and all of that. And once we go into the reader's profile, I can put their interests, activity interests, colors, and then names of some of their friends and their persona. Right, so I have requested books for this reader, and it has created these books, as you can see. So in each of these stories, either the reader or their friends are the heroes of the stories, and some of these stories relate to their lives, like what they're used to, some that are embedded with moral values. As you can see, this story is about kindness, this is about being truthful, another one about not wasting food, some of these things that we really care about as parents for our kids, and then sharing, and then being truthful. So let's take one of the look at one of the books. His friends help friends, and so the readers can read through these. And then for the reader, they can directly log in, and then they can go to the library and read books that have been created for them and approved by the parents, and then they can read these books. And once they are done reading, they can add that book to their favorites. They can come back to their favorites and read those books. So the good part about this is we plan to. I just wanted to do it for my son, and he really loves reading these stories. And I'm happy that I've been able to embed moral values, because human values is quite essential to the upbringing of a child, I believe. And what's a better way of giving them something that they love, which is reading books, when we can, as parents, create a positive influence. And in these stories, either the readers or their friends are the heroes, so there is a power of positivity of thinking. When they read the stories, they would see that there is a value that they can relate to. And as you keep on growing with reading these stories, you would see that you can go and apply it in real world, right? So I would go ahead and now do a live request, so let's do that. So I want to create a 5-page book, and I want to say about eating healthy. So when I send this request, I should be able to see the logs of what's happening. So we would watch that carefully. So now that I have submitted this request, you can see that it's starting the process of creating the story. So it's generating the title, generating the prelude, then it's sending some prompts. There's a lot of activity going on here, right, as we saw. And finally it's creating pictures for each of these. So this process is ongoing. Once this is completed, you would get that book. So this book is about eating healthy, and we should see that book in the library when it is fully created. The best part is this is a autonomous bot which is actually orchestrating this whole workflow and generating the content and putting it together. So once it is done, we would see that this page would have it. Okay, looks like we have our story ready. It says snack attack. I had a lot of fun working on this project for my 9 year old. He really loves the output from this project. He loves the books, he's immersed in those, he requests new books every day. So it has been, I would say, very fulfilling for me. Now, to summarize some of the thoughts I have here is here, I think what was important was to spend some time in understanding the problem statement, what we're really trying to do. And so there we had to think a lot about what the needs are, what kind of considerations we are going to have, who are the audiences here, right? What kind of content they would like, what their interests are, respecting all of that, defining the persona and each persona, how they interact on the platform. That was important. So the whole design thinking going into that, and then so that you can quickly iterate and test it out. So that was the first part. And then in terms of building a solution like this where you are leveraging generative AI or agentic AI, you also have to think a lot about the human in the middle. Like in this case, directly sending content to the audience, probably you need to have somebody to review the content, right? So putting that was also critical. And then think about all the other aspects, like when you're building the technology, that can it scale, right? So definitely we saw the power of agentic AI powered augmented by generative AI here that generated all this amazing content. But we never really ignore the fact that we also have to be careful about the security, the guardrails, the content, all the ethics aspects of the content that's coming out of it. So, in a nutshell, I can say that building solutions on these powerful technologies, you always have to strike a good balance between product, the human element, and the technology aspects of the solution. Hope you all liked it. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for listening or getting my insights from this. Hope to see you again soon. Thank you.